Hey friends, and welcome back all to Wisdom Bunny. Today we are doing the mid-year book freakout tag. So excited for this because I get to talk about all of my favourite books I've read so far this year. So let's get into the questions. Question 1 is the best book you've read so far this year, and this is really hard, but I think this might be one of my only 5-star books this year that really stands out to me as being something different and something that impacted me in a really different manner, and that is You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty. The reasons why I picked this one is the grief and how it was portrayed, the finding your soulmate and true love element of it, and the expression through art and how art can really portray emotions. All of these themes really hit home to me, and I just thought this book was packed full of magic, and it was so good. It was so heart-wrenching with being really heartwarming and soul fulfilling at the same time, and I definitely highly recommend it. The second question is the best sequel you've read so far this year, and that has to be The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stavata. This is the second book in the Raven Cycle series, and I read that series for the first time this year. I have a vlog about it, and wow, I just adored this world. The reason I picked this book is purely based on the other books, to be completely honest, because I just adored this world so very much. I fell in love with the characters and the storyline and the ever-evolving character development and storyline change and the plot progression. There was so much packed into these novels, and every little point had a way of weaving itself into the plot, and things that seemed insignificant at the beginning was actually really significant, and it was just such a good series, and I loved it so very much and so glad I read it. So I highly recommend if you haven't yet either. Next question is a new release you want to read but haven't yet, and that is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, I believe is the full title. I'm just so excited for this. I am anticipating reading it so very much. I've heard it compared to The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune, and I really like that book, so I'm very excited to see this one and how it progresses. And obviously a book about witches is right on my TBR. I adore everything about witches and books about witches, so very excited to get this one. I know it has a lot of hype surrounding it, so I'm a little bit scared to get to it in hopes that the hype lives up, but yes, one that I'm definitely excited to get to. The next is the most anticipated book you have for the second half of the year, and again, this is really hard to pick. I'm not that well versed on what's coming out and when it's coming out, as I know it really differs between US and UK, but the one in which I'm very excited, which I've been keeping my eye on, is My Roommate is a Vampire. As soon as I saw this cover and this title, I immediately wanted to buy it, and I was so heartbroken when I realised it hadn't been released yet. So that is very much on the top of my wish list. The next one is The Biggest Disappointment, and for me that is The Court of the Vampire Queen. In my most recent video you would have seen I read this one and rated it 2 stars. I did have high hopes of this one. I did enjoy Katie Roberts' other works just because they were so fun, so different, and a romance that I haven't really read before, whereas this one I didn't enjoy it at all. I didn't enjoy the characters, I didn't enjoy the plot, I didn't even enjoy the writing. It was just frustrating me, and I am really surprised I persevered and read through it. Like I say, I only rated it 2 stars, and yeah, it was just such a big disappointment. I'm really sad about it because I did have high hopes. Yeah, it lacked everything for me, and I wanted so much more from it. I think I was just expecting way much more than it was prepared to give. So yeah, sadly that is my biggest disappointment of the year. The biggest surprise is Gideon the Ninth. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to comprehend this, and it took me a while to physically read. I think it was from page 1 to 100. It took me so many months, and I actually read this in a video in which I was reading all of the books I had put down for a multitude of reasons. I ended up listening to the audiobook of Gideon the Ninth, and once you get immersed in the world and you understand the characters, you understand the plot points, it is so good. It's honestly so good. I was rooting for the main characters. The character dialogue was hilarious. I loved all the character dynamics. There's always this feeling of suspense. It's sci-fi as well, which I don't usually ever gravitate towards. It does have complex writing style in the sense of like the whole plot and the premise. It's just very different to anything I've ever read or experienced before, and yeah, it was such a whirlwind of a ride, and I loved it so very much. I went into it not knowing anything about it, and so it was a really big surprise surprised when I absolutely adored it. So a favourite new to you or debut author that you have discovered for the first half this year, and for me that is Rachel Griffith. I read both Wild is the Witch, Nature of Witches from her, and I absolutely adored them. I'd never read a novel from her until recently, and they were so good. I know she has a new release coming out, or maybe it's out already, in which I really want to get my hands on, because her writing style is just so easy to comprehend. It's so immersive. I sped through both of these novels so quickly, adored the characters, adored the plot, adored the setting, and the descripting of the writing, like I say, made me allow it to flow by. The book absolutely flew by when I was reading her writing style, and yes, so that is my new favourite author. So I have now added her to my new favourite author list. The next one is the newest favourite fictional crush, and I don't really ever have fictional crushes. I don't really ever project myself into a story much. I'm always rooting for the main character and the love interest to get together, but I'm never sort of crushing on them myself. I'm not sure if that's particularly weird or not, but the one person I would pick if I did have to put myself in that scenario is probably Ozraf, I think his name is, from A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon, because he is so funny. His banter and his humour is right up my alley. He seems so kind and caring, with the other obviously intentions there. He really truly cares so deep for this person. He was funny, he was charming, he was protective, and just everything I would want in a fictional crush, I suppose. So yeah, I think if I had to pick one, that would be my choice. My newest favourite fictional character has to be ᴏᴘᴇ from Every Heart a Doy. I just adored them. They were just so wholesome. They loved books, and all of the descriptions surrounding them was about books. They just seemed so true to themselves, and yeah, they just seemed like an absolute bundle of joy, and they made me smile every single time I heard their name mentioned or a piece of dialogue was from them in the audiobook. It was just so good, and definitely a new favourite character of mine. A book that made you cry. I don't really tend to gravitate towards books that make me cry, as I tend to want to escape from the world and almost something which might be upsetting me. I want to escape from that and experience joy and light through books. But something that did make me cry is The Simple World, purely for the parental aspect. If you've read this book, then you know it is heartbreaking, so destroying. It has a romance on top with a lot of banter and a lot of lightheartedness, but there is this kind of undercurrent of this heaviness of a parental relationship and losing a loved one flowing through it, and it was really heartbreaking, and it did make me tear up when I was reading it. So yeah, I think I'm gonna pick this one for the one that made me cry. That made you happy for me is A Marvelous Light. I could not stop reading this, and the relationship had me grinning from ear to ear. The banter between these two men was so funny, and the relationship and their dynamic was so good, and I just adored the story as well. It was historic, it was full of mystery, suspense, but it had this light-hearted element to it as well, and it just had a lot of different elements included in it, wrapped up in a really funny package, and yeah, I highly recommend it if you haven't read it. This beautiful book you have received or bought this year, for me it has to be ᴏᴘᴇᴱ. I find that cover absolutely stunning, and the book inside of it as well is really good. I really enjoyed that one, and I'm already anticipating the sequel. As soon as I finished that one, I was searching for when the sequel was going to be released. I don't think there's any further information on it yet, but back to the book cover. The book cover is so pretty. It has all of these bronze tones and almost feels very autumnal, in which, if you don't know me, that is my favourite season. So yes, this is definitely one of my most pretty covers. And the final question is, what book or books do you want to read by the end of the year? And for me, there is so many, too many to list here, but I think the most generic and general answer I can give is my whole TBR, because I am doing Project Zero TBR at the moment. If you do not know, or you're not subscribed to my channel, I'm wanting to try and get through my whole physical owned TBR by the end of the year. It's going good so far. I currently sit at 136, so there is still a lot to get through. But I'm not being too harsh about it, because obviously I read for fun, it's my special interest, and I love using reading to escape, so I don't want to be too harsh about what I must read. But this project and challenge is really making me look at my TBR in a different way and making me excited again, and which is exactly what I hoped and wished for. So yeah, that concludes the mid-year book freakout tag. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love to know any of your answers for these questions. Please do let me know in the comments below, and thank you ever so much for joining and watching as always, friends, and I will speak to you next time. I hope wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you have a wonderful day or night. Bye!